Hey guys, I'm Meredith Baker reporting for On the Map, Off the Radar. And here we have my good friend Nicolas Lippolis from Rio de Janeiro, who's going to be talking to us about police violence in Brazil. Recently in America, the cases of Michael Brown in Missouri and Eric Garner in New York have raised a lot of questions about police violence and discrimination in the States. But it's also a very pervasive issue in Brazil, and not just in the favelas, as is typically covered in mainstream media. So, Nicolas, first off, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me here.
And I wanted to start with a kind of comprehensive question about what you think the main causes of police violence are in Brazil.
Okay, so first, just to give you an idea, citing some numbers, Brazilian police kill on average 5 people per day, and that's 6 times more than the American police does. So, just to give a dimension of the gravity of the problem. I'd say the main reason for police violence, the fundamental reason, is the history of social exclusion that Brazil has. Brazil was a country that received over 40% of the slaves coming to the Americas, last country in the Western Hemisphere to abolish slavery. And this created a mass of excluded citizens, and this has had consequences up to this day. And it's manifested itself in the differentiated citizenship, some people are more citizens than others, in the creation of a military police in the 19th century, which was largely an instrument for social control in the cities for the rich, the elite, that felt threatened by this mass of slaves that inhabited the cities that share the same spaces as them. And also the heritage of the racism that came with all that. And like in the USA, the Brazilian police overwhelmingly targets black young men.
And so something that has been covered a lot in the news recently is how there has been an increase in police violence leading up to the Olympics. So how has the Olympics kind of exacerbated this problem? And again, do you think that racism plays a big role in that still as well?
I'd say that the Olympics haven't really exacerbated or aggravated the problem. They've somehow changed the dynamics in the sense that this issue is way bigger than what's reported in the media about the Olympics. It goes way beyond that. It's an issue of Brazilian society. And I think what's happened with the Olympics is that the state, which previously was happy having people, policemen and drug dealers fighting each other in the peripheries of the cities, and in fact, the drug dealers and police officers are not that different. If you look at them, it's not like it's the same groups striving for control of those areas, right, to extract rent, to obtain power. But what happened with the Olympics and changed the dynamics of it is that the state wants to control these areas in a more effective manner, afraid of international repercussions of what might happen in case there's a security crisis in Brazil. So the police, the military police and the military have entered these areas, and they have acted as instruments of social control in a manner differently from before, because they're effectively occupying them. But what reports from citizens and independent sources, people who live in these areas, show that there's been a lot of a backlash from these people towards the police, because they feel that they've only felt the heavy hand of the state and have not received the services that should be provided by them, and have lost a lot of the community autonomy that they previously had. Although this picture is mixed and should be qualified in different circumstances.
And so on that note, then what do you think the solution or a potential solution is to restore people's faith in the police?
In the first place, as has been suggested by many international institutions, actually, the first step would be a demilitarization of the Brazilian police. This ethos that has persisted in the Brazilian police, it's funny how an institution created 200 years ago still keeps kind of the same mentality. The mentality which is actually present in a large part of the Brazilian population, which seems to support this kind of Manichaean idea of the good guys versus the bad guys. So the demilitarization would be the first step, but also I believe a lot in the idea of changing people's mentalities,
right,
and taking out this moralistic tone that pervades public discourse and sees security as merely an issue of repression, and trying to understand the exclusion and the fundamental causes behind this violence.
Right. And you had mentioned to me before about a case of, I think, 13 people that were killed if you could just kind of reiterate what happened there and how that was an instance where it was totally ignored by mainstream media.
Yeah, so in El Salvador a month ago, 13 young men were killed in a favela executed by police officers who claimed that they were preparing to rob a bank, but evidence showed they were just executed. And the governor of the state of Bahia later compared the action of the police to a striker in front of the goal, and the striker just trying to find the best means possible to score. So I think it was reported in the media, but for example, it doesn't compare to the repercussion that it had of the Charlie Hebdo massacre that happened in Paris. So I think what this shows is that on the one hand, you had the state government supporting the execution of 13 black young men. You have the media not giving so much importance to those lives that they give to other lives in a far more removed context. And you have just a demonstration of the lethal violence that the Brazilian military police can exert.
And on that note, do you think this rise in citizen journalism, where people are recording these police brutalities on their phones or blogging about it with first-hand accounts, do you think those are helping change the dynamics that because police feel maybe they're held more accountable now?
In my opinion, this has definitely helped, because previously you really would not have access to the information coming from these communities, and the social media has publicized it. You can access it on blogs, on Facebook, on all kinds of social media, Twitter, and it's helped also to organize these people. But at the same time, we need to keep in mind the massive barrier that there is for a democratization of the Brazilian media. It's one of the most concentrated media industries in the world. Even, if I'm not mistaken, even The Economist said that Brazil has to democratize its media. And this community organization, has not been strong enough to overcome the dominance of the media industry by certain groups who shape people's mentalities and actually contribute to the whole social problem. So my answer for your question would be, yes, they have helped, but it's still not enough.
And finally, do you think that the mainstream media is portraying police violence in Brazil accurately, or do you think there's some aspects that are overemphasized or either obscured?
Well, I'd say that police violence, when it's perpetrated against middle classes, the white upper classes, it's given much more attention than it's perpetrated to the lower classes. And this was pretty obvious in the 2013 protests that occurred in Brazil, which was reported all over the media, and which actually did not have the lethal consequences that other kinds of police intervention had. But the fact that the protesters were most middle class raised the prominence of the actions of the police. So this all integrates back to what I was telling you previously about differentiated citizenship in Brazil. And we're all formally equal citizens, but some are just more citizens than others.
Right. Well, this has been very, very interesting. Thanks for giving us your insight into police violence in Brazil. And if you guys want more information, we'll include some links below the video. Thanks for watching On the Map, Off the Radar. Até logo.
Bye-bye.